Today I will be reviewing the book Still Alice by Lisa Genova. This book was self-published by the author in 2007 before it was picked up by a big publishing house. Later it was made into a movie and Julianne won Best Actress. She won an Academy Award for her performance. Alec Baldwin played in the movie as well. The book itself is a bestseller. So why listen to my review? For a few reasons. If you're a caregiver of someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, this review will help you determine if you want to even read the book, because it is not an easy one to read if you're a caregiver. And two, I am going to summarize the book in a very short amount of time and tell you everything you need to know about the book. And it will also give you some insights on Alzheimer's and dementia. The purpose of the book was to kind of spread awareness from a unique perspective. It is written from the perspective of Alice, a successful 49-year-old woman, a teacher at Harvard University, and she is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So she first notices that something is wrong, and she actually goes to see her doctor about it. She gets the diagnosis. And it's really a book written from her perspective, her recognizing cognitive changes. Like, she can feel the shift, she can feel what's happening to her, and as she progressively gets worse, she stops being able to always know when she's affected by Alzheimer's, but oftentimes she can feel it. She knows that she can't find her keys, for instance. Judging by people's faces, I've just repeated myself, or I've said something awkward. It's a very difficult book to read because if you're a caregiver, it's like having an inside look at what your loved one has gone through or is going through, and it's horrific, right? At one point in the book, Alice can't find the washroom. She can't find the washroom in her own house, and she pees herself. At another point, she ends up in her neighbor's kitchen. I think for me, the book is important to raise awareness because oftentimes people think that Alzheimer's and dementia is just about memory, and it's not. It's so much more than that. It's forgetting how to do everything. It's forgetting how to use a phone, how to use a computer, how to brush your teeth, how to eat, how to swallow eventually. It's a horrible disease and an even more horrific death. I think this book is important because it brings awareness to all that dementia and Alzheimer's is. However, what I didn't like about this book is that it kind of hits all the marks. It hits all the symptoms without it really being clear to the reader that, for one, not all dementia or Alzheimer's patients have the same symptoms. And two, Alice is not reflective of the general population of people that have dementia or Alzheimer's. What I mean by that is 10 to 15% of people with Alzheimer's and dementia are self-aware, know that, okay, something's up, something's going on. I am not myself. I am suffering cognitive decline and can kind of feel the dementia. 10 to 15% of people are self-aware in that respect, when it's not an insignificant percentage. However, it's not the norm. And so I kind of had to remind myself as I was reading this book, okay, this is likely not what my mom went through. This is likely not what she experienced. And then I kind of, had to go back in my memory too, 7 years ago when my mom was diagnosed. She never brought anything to my attention or anyone's attention. I'm the one that had to bring her to the doctor, and I told her that I noticed some changes that I just wanted a doctor to check out. I knew something was wrong, but she didn't. So it made me feel better. But reading Still Alice makes you feel worse. It makes you feel like, oh my God, is this what they go through? 10 to 15% of people, yes, they do. I don't know if it's to the same extent as demonstrated in Still Alice, but the majority don't. So that kind of, bothered me a little bit when I was reading it, because I felt like this isn't right to portray it this way, but at the same time, why not, right? I understand the author's perspective, and she's thinking, well, there's never been a book written like this before, and she's right. There's no book out there written from the perspective of someone that has Alzheimer's. And Alice had these things where, she'd almost test herself, which to me doesn't make sense. But for instance, she had this thing that would pop up in her BlackBerry every morning. She had to answer these questions. Where do you live? Where's your office? How many kids do you have? When's the birthday of one of your children? And if you struggle in any way to answer any of these questions, then open the butterfly file on your computer and follow the instructions immediately. And in this butterfly file are the directions on how to kill herself with a bottle of sleeping pills. And so at one point in the book, it's inevitable. She opens the file, she reads it, but by the time she gets to the top of the stairs, she forgets why she's there. And then she reads it again, and then by the time she gets to her bedroom door, she forgets what she's looking for. This hit home for me because that was my mom. Like when we were waiting for her diagnosis, she said to me, if it comes back as Alzheimer's, I'm going to kill myself. And I've heard that from other caregivers too. Their parents have expressed this. Or their spouse has expressed this desire, and it's understandable. They don't want to become a burden. They don't want to end their lives like that. They don't want to forget their children. They don't want to live like that. So it's understandable, and maybe that's a more common feeling or desire than is currently known. Still, Alice was a book that championed the person with Alzheimer's, and I think that was important because in the book, her kids and her husband are talking about her in front of her oftentimes, and that always irritated me, reading that in the book. But it irritated me mostly because people did that to my mom in my family as if she wasn't there, and that always bothered me. I just feel like, they're still a person. They deserve to be treated with respect, and I feel like the author really represented what someone with Alzheimer's goes through. I just don't think that the self-awareness is what is common, and thank goodness for that. Alice's husband was not a good caregiver. He was still very concerned with his job, and she told him at one point, I don't think I have much time left. Like, I want to take this sabbatical, your sabbatical next year with you. Like, this will be the last year I remember. And he took another job. He took a new job that he was passionate about his research. And so a doctor at one point in the book asked him if he had any support or if he had taken any sort of like dementia education series courses, that sort of thing. I've taken those with the Alzheimer's Society, and so it made me think of that. And I remember the doctor asking my father, 6-7 years ago, and him being like, no. And it was the same with Alice's husband, no. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So maybe that's more common than I know. I've heard from other caregivers that family members don't know how to support the person with Alzheimer's, or there's usually one person in the family that gets it, the caregiver, and then siblings or aunts or uncles or even the spouse of the person doesn't really get it, doesn't really know how to support that person. And so I think the book is important for those reasons, to teach people what the disease actually is. What is Alzheimer's? What is dementia? What does it entail? And how can you help? How can you be a good support, be a good caregiver? And at one point in the book, probably my favorite part, Alice spoke at a dementia conference, a conference to raise awareness for dementia and Alzheimer's. And she gave a beautiful speech, and she was so scared. Her Alzheimer's was progressing, and she was reading off her papers, too scared to look up at the crowd in case she lost her place or forgot what she was saying. And she basically said, we're still people. We're still in here. Yes, we might forget words and say weird things sometimes, but, don't treat us differently. We're still us. It was beautiful, but it was hard to read too, because it's just, people don't know how to treat people with Alzheimer's or dementia, and inevitably they are treated differently. And it's understandable too, because they don't know how to react to someone asking them the same question right after they just asked the question, or forgetting something or doing something weird. And it's only us caregivers that have experience with that kind of know how to handle it. So I think the book is important to raise awareness in that respect. And what I want to say to all the caregivers out there is that you might not be ready to read it, and that's okay. I wouldn't have been ready to read this last year or the year before. So it took me 7 years to get to this point. And I still cried after reading it. I didn't think I would. I was like, no, I'm fine. This doesn't represent my mom. And, my mom wasn't self-aware like Alice, and she wasn't hurting that much when Alzheimer's took over her brain, but I still cried. So I'm going to leave it there. That's my review of Still Alice. It is a powerful read. It is definitely one of a kind, and I don't think everyone should read it.